Thank you for joining us for our webinar. The topic of today's webinar is post-retired employees. I am Beverly Snyder. I'm the Account Services Manager here at the Retirement Office. Today I'm going to walk you through everything that you might need to know about a post-retired employee. Before we get started, let's talk about why we need to know about post-retired employees. Title 49. What is Title 49? Title 49 is the Utah Code, Utah State Retirement and Insurance Benefit Act. Title 49 is where all of our retirement laws come from, and just as a reminder, there is a link to Title 49 on our website. Now let's define what a post-retired employee is. A post-retired employee is somebody who has met eligibility, they qualify, they've come into the retirement office and they have completed the process and they are receiving a retirement benefit allowance from the retirement office. Then after they start receiving that benefit allowance, they return to work for a participating employer. Now there's two things I want to point out here. It doesn't matter the capacity that they return to work in. They can come back part-time, they can come back full-time, they can come back elected, they can be appointed, they can be an independent contractor or somebody that you're just paying on a 1099. It doesn't matter. If they're post-retired, all of the post-retired laws would apply to them. That's why it is so important for all of the employers to know who is post-retired inside your agency. The second thing I want to point out is we have over 470 participating employers across the state. It doesn't matter which participating employer the employee retires from. They don't have to retire from your agency in order to come back to work for you and be post-retired. They can retire from any participating employer across the state and return to work for any participating employer across the state. Now, when we talk about our post-retired employees, there are two requirements that all participating employers have to adhere to. Number one, all post-retired employees must be certified with URS. You have to let us know that they are working for your agency. And how do you know that? If you go online, because you all know that you have to certify all of your employees, including the post-retired. So when you go online to certify an employee, you will get a box that will pop up and it's going to tell you that that employee is receiving a retirement benefit from our office. So you're going to go through the process and complete it. You're going to say, okay, here's the effective date that this post-retired employee is coming to work for us. Which system would you be putting this employee in? Public safety, public employees, firefighters. You just have to let us know what their job is going to be. So here's where you would put the current position that they will be working in as a post-retired employee. And then you are going to see the post-retired timeframes. We will let you know when you certify them if they are going to have any limitations. If you have any questions when you're certifying a post-retired employee, I'm going to give you some phone numbers at the end of this webinar, and absolutely pick up the phone and call one of us. The second thing that you have to adhere to when it comes to post-retired employees is all post-retired employees must appear on the contribution file coming into our office. So you are going to put their earnings on that file. We need to know that they are working for your agency, and we need to know how much money they are making. And I want to point out that it's really important that you get your post-retired employees certified in the pay period that they come back to work for you, and get them on that very next contribution file. Now let's talk about the post-retired employees and the laws that pertain to them. Now, when we do this, we are going to break this into two different groups. We are going to talk first about all of the post-retired employees who are working for you and have been in their position working for your agency prior to July 1st, 2010. Then we're going to break it up and we're going to talk about all post-retired employees that you have hired since July 1st, 2010, or those that you might hire in the future. I want to point out that the laws are a little bit different for both groups, so it's really important that you understand the difference between the two. So let's start by talking about post-retired employees hired and in place prior to July 1st, 2010. The first thing is, again, I'm going to reiterate, they have to be certified with the retirement office. Now, we come out and do compliance reviews and we audit 100% of your post-retired employees. And so I would imagine by now, any that you have had in place prior to July 1st, 2010 have probably all been certified. A double check, just, if go down your list and then you can double check and just make sure that they're all certified with our office. Number two, again, I'm going to reiterate, they have to appear on that contribution file. Now, because these post-retired employees were hired and in place prior to July 1st, 2010, they are grandfathered in, meaning you do not have to pay an amortization rate for these post-retired employees. And the last thing regarding this group of post-retired employees, this is the only group that you are authorized to pay an employer savings plan for. It's not a requirement, it's voluntary. If you choose to give them an employer savings plan, you can do that. You pick the amount that you want to give them. You just cannot exceed the normal cost rate. And so let's talk about that normal cost rate. So the normal cost rate for an employer savings plan, I would be referring to contributions into a 401k. If you, the employer, are making those contributions on behalf of your post-retired employee hired prior to July 1st, 2010, you have to understand the stipulations that come with that. Title 49 says that an employer paid contributions are allowed into a qualified board approved plan only. That's AKA for the employer paid savings contribution has to come to URS and it has to be in a 401k plan. We have had employers who were contributing contributions into 457 plans for their post-retired, and back on January 1st, we stopped allowing that to come in. So if you put a post-retired employer paid savings contribution on your contribution file into a 457, then we're going to call you up, we're going to strip that off the file, and we're going to call you up and we're going to make sure that you get your tax year corrected, and then we're going to move that money into a 401k. And again, any employer paid savings contributions cannot exceed the normal cost rate. So now I want to talk about if you are a Social Security exempt employer. Social Security exempt employers, you are authorized to pay up to the normal cost rate, and then the amount that the Social Security Administration requires you to pay for your employees, you can add that on top of your normal cost rate. What I encourage you not to do is don't round. If your Social Security rate is 7.5%, don't round it up to 8, because then you might be exceeding the limits and that could potentially throw your employee into a post-retired violation. So if you're Social Security exempt, you can do up to the normal cost rate and then you can add the Social Security administration rate on top of it. So now let's talk about how you know what that normal cost rate is. If you go onto the URS website and go into that employer portal, then you're going to click on the button that says rates and you're going to find the rate sheet. If you look up at the rate sheet, there's a column up there, and what that column says is that post-retired employees hired before July 1st, 2010, go down the left-hand side of that rate sheet and find the fund that that post-retired employee is in. When you find your fund, you can see my ruler, slide your finger across to the column, slide your finger down, and there you're going to find the normal cost rate. Again, an employer paid savings plan for post-retired employees hired before July 1st, 2010 is a voluntary action by the employer. You're not required to do it. You just cannot exceed this normal cost rate. Okay, now let's break our post-retired employees hired after July 1st, 2010. So any that you've hired since July 1st, 2010, any that you're going to hire in the future, these are the rules that are going to apply to them. Now, one thing that I want to point out is the only thing you need to be concerned about is the date that you hire them. It doesn't matter what other participating employers they've worked for. It doesn't matter the date that they retired. You need to focus on the date that you hire them. And so let's talk, we're going to break these post-retired employees up into three groups. So the first one is if I retire and I return to work with your agency 0 to 60 days after the date of my retirement. You're going to go online and certify me because that's what you're required to do. And when that certification comes into our office, if I fall into the 0 to 60 day time frame, my retirement check is going to be canceled. When my retirement check is canceled, I am no longer considered a post-retired employee. You would determine eligibility for me, put me into the system, recertify me as eligible or ineligible. If I'm working full-time eligible, then you would start making contributions and I would continue to earn service credits. The next thing when it comes to the employees that fall in the 0 to 60 days, the clock restarts ticking at termination. So if I work for you for 30 days and I say, well, I'm going to quit, I really want my retirement check back, then the day that I stop working for you, my 60 days starts counting that very next day. In order to keep my retirement check, I have to stay out of the retirement system with any participating employer for a full 60 days. The next thing that comes with this group of post-retired employees is any post-retired employee hired after July 1st, 2010 is not authorized to receive any type of an employer paid savings plan. So you, the employer, cannot contribute anything to a 401k, a 457, an IRA, nothing that resembles a retirement account. And that means with anybody, not just with the retirement office. So you can't put money into Fidelity or John Hancock or TIAA-CREF. If I am post-retired after July 1st, 2010, I am not authorized to receive any employer savings plan contributions. Okay, the next group of post-retired employees after July 1st, 2010 are the ones that retire and return to work 61 days to 365 days after the retirement date. They can do that and they can keep their check, but this is the group that has limitations. Number one, they have an income limitation. And right now, the income limitation is $16,351. If I exceed that amount in a calendar year, my retirement check will stop, and then on January 1st of the following year, it will start back up again. So the income limitation is based on calendar year. Number two, I am not allowed to be in a benefited position. Post-retired employees in the 61-day to 365-day bracket cannot receive vacation, sick leave, holiday pay, medical, dental, all of the normal HR benefits that your regular full-time employees would be receiving. Next, the clock again restarts at termination. So this is a confusing point that employers ask me about quite frequently. I'm a post-retired employee falling into the 61-day to 1 year mark, and I've worked for you for a year and a half. Why doesn't this post-retired employee go into the over 1 year mark now? And the answer to that question is the only way I can move from one bracket to the other is to stay out of the retirement system for the time necessary. So in order to go into the next bracket, which is 1 year or more out of the system, I actually have to terminate and stay out of the system for 1 year. Another reminder here, any post-retired employee hired after July 1st, 2010 is not eligible to receive any type of an employer savings plan contribution. Okay. The third group of post-retired employees after July 1st, 2010 are those that retire and stay out of the system for a full year before returning to work. Number one, this is the group that you would have to pay the amortization rate for. And I want to point out that you need to make sure that you're paying the amortization rate for whatever position you have them in. If you have them in a public safety position, then you would pay the amortization rate that would be applicable to the public safety system. If you hire me back as a secretary, you would be paying the rate that's applicable to a public employee. So this group does not have an income limitation. I'm allowed to receive normal benefits, but you do have to pay the amortization rate for me. And again, the rate's based on the retirement system that I am going to be working in. No income limitation, no benefit restrictions, but I still am not authorized to receive any employer savings plan contribution. I get calls frequently from employers that say, well, the employee retired before July 1st, 2010 and went back to work for a different employer prior to July 1st, 2010, and they were allowed to receive the savings plan with that employer. So does that mean that I'm authorized to give them the savings plan? And again, the answer is no. The only thing that you're basing the bracket that your post-retired employees are in is your hire date with you, okay? Now let's talk about how we find what that amortization rate is. Again, just like with the normal cost rate, same rate sheet, you're going to go to the employer portal, you're going to pull up that rate sheet, you are going to take your finger and find the fund on the left-hand side and roll it across to see what the amortization rate is that would be required to be on the file for that post-retired employee. So you're going to submit that amortization rate on the contribution file when you report that post-retired employee. Okay, now let's give you a couple of resources. If you go into the employer portal on our URS website, everything that you need to know about the post-retired employees is going to be right there in that employer guide. So if you go in and you are in the employer portal, right there at the top it says Employer Guide. When you click on that employer guide, there's a whole section on post-retired employment. When you click on that, there are all of the topics that you need to see right there. And when you click on those, you're going to be able to open them up and you're going to be able to read everything that we've talked about today. And an additional resource for you on the URS website, you can always find these exact laws in Title 49. Okay? That covers all of our topics with post-retired employees today. I want to make sure that you have a few additional employer resources. If you have any questions about the topics we've discussed, call us. I am in the Employer Services Department here at URS. There is our phone number right there for you. And then you can also call the Defined Benefit or our Retirement Department. They can also answer any questions related to post-retired employees that you may have. I'm Beverly Snyder. Again, I'm the Account Services Manager here at the Retirement Office. You are always welcome to call me or email me. If you've got a pen, really quick, my phone number is 801-366-7493. My email address is beverly.snyder, and that's SNYDER @urs.org. We'll keep this webinar open for a few moments in case you have any questions, and otherwise, thank you for joining us today.